question focus. ICICI up by 11%. Kotak, meanwhile, going into its earnings day, down by about 5% in trade. But let's just stay with SBI, and here's the chairman, Rajnish Kumar, on your channel. Thank you, Mr. Kumar, for joining us here on ET Now. This is Nentara. You know, when I interviewed you in Washington, D.C., it was your first TV interview as the chairman. You had talked about why isn't it that the government is looking at recap bonds. And guess what? Within 2 weeks, we've seen this mega announcement of 2.11 lakh crore rupee recap, 1.35 lakh crore via recap bonds. Going by the stock price, is certainly a very positive move for SBI. But can you tell me a bit of what you make of the quantum? Are you happy with the quantum?
I think I would say more than satisfied. If I say satisfied, it would be an understatement. But because the calculations probably which have undergone, which the ministry would have undertaken, and it meets the requirement of the banking sector in entirety, both for the risk as well as the growth capital.
Okay, now let's just get a little technical part of what it means. The bank recap via the bonds is still going to be a kind of a book entry. It will surely address the bank capital needs, but do you see banks getting impacted in terms of the capital, the NPAs? What I'm trying to say is you're going to be capitalized, but there's no letting up right now as far as the provisioning norms go. Implicit debt is going to become explicit debt. So just break this down for us. What exactly is it going to mean?
No, basically it is that there are many banks which were falling on the norms for capital adequacy. So one is that that requirement will be met, and that is what I call is the risk capital part. And apart from that, the liquidity in the system is enough, but banking sector's capability to lend has been impaired because it is what I call is the risk capital part. And apart from that, the liquidity in the system is enough, but banking sector's capability to lend has been impaired because because of the provisioning, their profits are under severe stress. And if one-time cleanup, which is expected to happen now, so once that happens, then banks can resume lending operations. Of course, this capital infusion will be coming with certain expectations from the public sector banking system in terms of improvement in their risk governance structure and particularly around the credit risk management. And overall, the initiatives on the HR front or the technology front. So these are some of the things which we expect that government will be demanding from all the banks.
Thank you so much for joining in. This is Avan joining into the discussion as well, Mr. Kumar. Now, bank recapitalization does not still address some of the legacy issues in the banking system in terms of credit appraisal, or be it risk supervision and management processes, etc. So, how do you see some of these issues being resolved?
Yes, very much. And I think in the press conference yesterday itself, there were clear indications that banking sector reforms will follow. I read it this way that you will get the capital, but you have to do certain things as a bank, which should be outlined by the government. And I think this effort should start from boards itself. There is a need to strengthen the boards of the public sector banks, and which I am very confident that government will be taking care of this aspect. And then comes the management, and then comes all the processes, governance structure. So I think it is high time that all of us, I'm talking about including State Bank of India, that there is always a scope for improvement, and we should not hesitate and shy in taking such steps which leads to a situation where the mistakes of the past can be avoided. In lending, risks always remain and will remain. If there is no risk, then there is no reward also. So what is very, very pertinent is that understanding the risk, having a proper risk appetite framework. Not everybody can take all type of risks. All banks are not cut to take all type of risks. For example, project lending, which is such a risky and sophisticated, requires sophisticated risk analysis. So I doubt that all banks can do project lending. This is just one example. So every bank will have to find their niche, and they should not be copying each other. The State Bank of India may have still the capability to take risks and lead in project lending. But this may not be the case with all the banks, and if they start just copying the State Bank of India, it will not help. So this is what the press conference also, I think Secretary DFS gave the hint, that there has to be some differentiation and not each and every public sector bank be clone of each other.
Okay, understood. So, of course, that strategy of growth is different for SBI versus some of the other PSU banks. But I want to understand from you as well, Mr. Kumar, how much will bank recapitalization actually help the stressed asset situation or resolution? Will it raise the bank's ability to take haircuts now?
No, that is the whole idea, that let us put the past behind us. Whatever has happened, has happened. So stressed assets will have to be resolved, and that resolution mechanism, there are several ways and means to address the stressed assets. NCLT or insolvency and bankruptcy code being one of the most significant reforms as far as the resolution of the stressed assets is concerned. That process is on, and we should start seeing resolutions happening in next 2 or 3 months from now. Because in certain sectors there is considerable interest from the investors, and steel sector stressed assets have seen very good expressions of interest. So that way, like, resolutions will happen. That is one part. And the other part is that all the extra spending which government has committed on the infrastructure sector, it should help revive the demand as well as the employment generation in the country. And the third major initiatives which have been lost in the headlines probably are the steps for the MSME sector, including the efforts to solve their cash flow problems through the mechanism of their bills on trades, which I consider to be a very, very major initiative, and this will help MSME sector in a big way. Government has made it mandatory for the public sector undertakings, but I am hopeful that even the private sector undertakings will follow the suit.
So when do you see banks get the capital infusion? Banking system credit growth is at the multi-decade low. How do you see that going up or credit boost coming in once you get this money?
Capital infusion, I think it will happen quickly, because having decided on the quantum and the ways and means through which capital will be provided by the government, and that would, of course, there will be some prioritization. It is a 2-year program, but wherever upfront infusion is required, I don't think that there will be any hesitation on the part of the government to provide that upfront capital. So each bank's requirement will be different, and the requirement can be spaced out. With the banks which are in urgent need of capital, they can be taken on priority basis, and the banks which may wait for 6 months, for some the capital infusion will be upfront, for some it may be in 2 installments. So all that is a matter of detail. But as far as lending is concerned, the capital infusion takes care of the supply side. And on the demand side, there has been the demand for corporate credit, particularly has been muted in last couple of months. And that demand revival, it may happen now in next 3 months or so. And we are hoping that the credit growth will improve.
So what will be your capital needs for FY 18-19? How much of an infusion do you expect via direct funds and via bond recap?
So that is a matter of finer details. So we will be doing our maths now, and we'll make an assessment of what are the provisioning requirements on account of NCLT cases, and the cases which are likely to be referred to NCLT. So, and what are the regulatory guidelines? But our intent would be that we make more and more provisions upfront to the extent possible, and the cleanup happens as quickly as possible, and whatever our requirements for capital are, and at what time do we need and in what manner, and that will depend upon, as I said, that who needs it first, who needs more, what are the priorities, what are the norms which government would like to follow. So all these finer details will be worked out.
Thank you so much, sir, for taking our time for us and explaining what does this mean. That was the biggest bank's MD.